Alright, today this video is to help you guys understand the difference between 75mm and NTN. For those that are just getting into the world of Telemark, you probably hear this phraseology and you're not really sure what's going on. So I wanted to start with the basics and kind of go over where these terms come from and then some of the things that differentiate one boot from another. So to understand this, I'm going to take you back to the world of leather boots. And this is where we're going to understand what 75mm means, otherwise known as the Nordic norm. So on a leather Telemark boot back in the day, you'll notice that it has a square toe, often referred to as the duck bill. And the measurement across this toe is 75mm in width and fits in a 75mm binding. And on most 75mm toes, it will say Nordic norm 75mm. Now, all of these boots are actually called 75mm boots. They all fit in the category of having a square toe with a 75mm Nordic norm toe. So you've got a leather boot, you've got a lower cuff, T4 from Scarpa, also has a 75mm toe. And you've also got the T1, which is a 75mm boot as well. All Telemark boots up until about a decade ago were 75mm boots. Okay, now on to NTN. First off, NTN stands for New Telemark Norm. So about 10 years ago, a new boot and binding system came out to try to shift the norm of what we use in Telemark skiing. Currently we have both, and so it's important to kind of know the difference between the two. The NTN boot does not use the 75mm Nordic norm. It actually has no square toe on it and more of a rounded toe that might look more like an alpine ski boot. The one thing that it does have that a 75mm boot does not have is this thing right here called the second heel, and otherwise known as the duck butt in some circles. So 75mm has the duck bill, and this has the duck butt. So side by side, you'll notice that you can find boots that are very similar. The Scarpa T1 and the Scarpa TX Pro are actually very similar in terms of construction, about the same flex, 4-buckle boot, but you aren't going to be able to use these in the same bindings. The T1 is compatible with all 75mm bindings, or ones that use a square-toed boot, and NTN boots are going to only use the NTN bindings. So for those getting into Telemark, this is the newer technology that's come out in the last decade, and now more and more people are making the NTN bindings. And 75mm bindings work great, but there are not as many boot offerings, it seems, moving forward. So that's the difference between 75mm and NTN.